Hello, good morning, everybody. Steve here from Buried Life. I'm the retired tech hobby guy who's retired here in Korea. Boy, that didn't come out great at all, did it? Anyway, yeah, it ended up, for a little bit of background, my wife and I, we sold everything in the United States, lock, stock, and barrel, house, cars, guns, ammo, everything, including the kitchen junk drawer. And we ended up being retired here in Korea. First thing I want to do is apologize because I'm doing some laser engraving. I'm making some slate coasters, so if you hear that noise, that's the laser machine going. But with that, recently, I went to bed one night at about like 10:30, woke up in the morning with a bunch of messages, and people were like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? I've got a bedroom for you, if you have to leave. And I'm like, all these messages, and I'm like, okay, something's afoot. And so I'm starting to check the news. And lo and behold, President Yoon of Korea declared martial law. And it was like, oh, this was like at 11 p.m. at night. Yeah, I'm old. I went to bed early. And I woke up and yeah, it's just all hell broke loose. Well, no, not really. It just ended up, he called martial law, had military vehicles and stuff around the National Assembly building area thing where the politicians are doing their thing. And which kind of bothers me. Why would you? And this is all about a budget and trying to get what he wants for the country done at a vote at 11 o'clock at night. And he declares that it's political infighting. It's the left versus the right. And they're throwing out all the stops on everything. And then Yoon comes out with this thing and says, hey, I'm declaring martial law. And about 6 hours later, it got voted out because according to the Korean constitution, he can declare martial law, but he better have a damn good reason. And then it can be revoked if the National Assembly or the parliamentary ends up voting against it. And it was unanimous. It was even people in Yoon's own group were like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, this is the negative effects of martial law is really interesting in Korea. If you know the history of Korea, there's been a series of leaders who have declared martial law, and it hasn't been favorable at all in the past. It's depending on who you talk to, but generally, when you declare martial law, it's infringing upon the rights of citizens. It's just ugly. There's this negative connotation that comes with declaring martial law. Unless it's like a national emergency or national natural disaster of some sort, where you're going to keep people inside to keep them safe. That's what it comes down to. Act of war, God, whatever, that type of thing. But so when this happened, this had some serious repercussions and things that rippled out into the world that is going to cause some problems for Korea. And yeah, it's not going to be one of those things. They're already talking about impeachment. We'll take a look at that, and then some of the negative things that ended up happening. So let's just jump right on into it. Here we have a video from Arirang News, and talking about this. It's only a couple minutes, so let's just jump into it.
And staying at the parliament, the political fallout of the country's brief martial law continues as opposition lawmakers have filed a motion to impeach the president. Our correspondent Lee Shi-hu is standing by live on the line. Shi-hu, what is the latest at the National Assembly at this hour?
Right, Sunny, the evening draws near here at the National Assembly after a sleepless night and day of protests, as you can see behind me. Just a few hours ago, at a little over 2:40 this afternoon, the main opposition Democratic Party, along with 5 other minor parties, jointly submitted a motion to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol for declaring a martial law that goes against the Constitution. Take a listen.
Yeah, that's not good.
All 191 lawmakers of the opposition signed a motion submitted. There was no way we could overlook the unconstitutional declaration of martial law and the internal disturbance and neglect the collapse of democracy.
Their plan now is to open a plenary session just about 7 hours from right now at 1 minute past midnight to report the bill to the whole assembly. They will then push to vote on the bill anytime from 24 to 72 hours after its initial report, as according to the law. This means the vote may take place anytime from early Friday morning, but the exact time will be decided through discussion between the lawmakers. For now, the opposition parties have asked their members to stand by until the weekend for not only the anticipated voting process, but also any other emergencies that may arise.
Right, I see. And what has been the response, Shihu, from ruling party lawmakers? I mean, do tell us a bit about their stance.
Yes, Sunny. So the ruling People Power Party held a closed-door meeting for nearly 4 hours this morning. Following the meeting, its chairman Han Dong-un shared that they discussed the need to potentially expel President Yoon from the party for creating a crisis that goes against the party. They also discussed the need to possibly dismiss the defense minister and the entire cabinet. But now there was some sort of consensus on the need for the dismissal of the cabinet and the defense minister. But as for President Yoon and whether he should be rejected from the party, there were differences in opinions. Listen in.
As for the third suggestion, there were many opinions, so we've decided to continue our discussions on it, tentatively for the time being.
Now, those who raised concerns reportedly fear a potential transfer administration from the ruling PPP to the opposition if the ruling party expels away its president. Now, the PPP is expected to hold urgent meetings throughout the night, which I will keep you posted on throughout. Sunny?
All right, Shihu, it's looking like another sleepless night for you at the National Assembly in the time being. Thank you so much for that coverage.
Alrighty, yeah. So, yeah, they're talking about impeachment, and basically, again, it's political infighting on the Korea front as far as the president. The People's Power movement, whatever, that's considered the right, more conservative side, apparently. And then you have the Democratic side, which is the liberal left, kind of similar to what we see in the United States. You know, they have problems. Left versus right always have problems, and they always throw a bunch of things in there. And I'm an independent, so, you know, I'm for the best ideas that are out there, and let's use them. So, yeah, and now that I'm an expat and I'm retired here in Korea, pretty much I just got to sit back and see how this goes because I have no dog in this hunt. I can't vote. I mean, after so many years, I could go through a process and whatever, but I'm not really interested or able to do that at this time. But some of the negative effects that happened because of this martial law declaration, which only lasted like 4 to 6 hours, something like that, it wasn't bad, is it rippled out through the world, and suddenly stock went down, you know, their stock exchange went down, the money exchange, so the won to dollar rate increased. It was kind of like the highest it's ever been. I think it was like 1460-ish or 1420, something like that, per dollar, which it's high anyway because what we're ended up seeing is Trump coming into office as president of the United States, talking about tariffs and so on and so forth. So a big run on U.S. dollars as that's going to get a better exchange rate for the Korean won, and conversely, the other way around, not so much. So, and then the economic problems that Korea is having with Samsung and the investigations and all of that. But what's really interesting is the other fallout is that there's already talk around the world of people who wanted to come to visit. So the tourist industry might see a dip in people coming to Korea because it's like, ooh, martial law, maybe put off that trip to Korea for a little bit until things kind of mellow out. You know, I don't want to be caught in a country that declares martial law and I can't get out, you know, a worst case scenario, or hurt something. Yeah, that would be bad too. So that is causing some problems. So we see a dip in the stock, we see an increase or actually a decrease in the amount of won to dollar, increase in won to dollar, which is bad for Koreans as a whole, great for people who have US dollars. So currency exchange is kind of a problem. Businesses, there's, you know, this is going to ripple out because in Korea, who is already experiencing an economic downturn, excuse me, is going to see a little bit more of a dip because foreign countries are going to be like, whoa, wait a second. martial law, that's like a draconian type of thing these days. It's usually associated with very negative effects. That, yeah, it's synonymous with instability, and so you might have foreign countries that are trying to do business with Korea, that could have a negative effect, and that would be bad for Korea in its economy as it is right now. It doesn't need any worse news. Yeah, and the whole thing just ends up being very problematic. And so the stock market, all that stuff. This also has brought about some other things. So let's take a look at this. Here we have, it feels like a coup d'etat. Let me see if I can actually get on the page and make this a little bit bigger. Martial law sparks chaos worry in South Korea. This is from the BBC. And I tried to get a variety of news sources to try to get different angles on the coverage. But so far, actually living here and seeing the Korean news and the wife letting me in on some of this stuff, I'll let you know whether this is applicable or real from what we are seeing with boots on the ground and living here in Korea. South Koreans have described feelings of worry, shock, and confusion after the martial law. Televised address said military rule was needed to protect the country from North Korea's communist forces and to eliminate anti-state elements before it's swiftly blocked by military police. It also left some South Koreans anxious about the fallout from the political instability, including Seoul resident Ra Ji-soo, who reported hearing helicopters near her home late on Tuesday. Some people said it felt like a coup d'etat in Myanmar is happening here in Korea. I'm worried. Again, the whole thing, when you hear the phrase martial law, all you're flooded with, or at least all that I can see, is it comes to mind as just negative, very negative things for the country and its people. Adding the sense of spiraling events out of control. She also said a friend in the police force had received an emergency mobilization order and rushed to the station. In immediate aftermath, the country's military declared the suspension of all parliamentary activity. So basically what happens is that, one side said, hey, this is what I want to do. The other side says, no, we don't like it. And so this side says, yeah, well, you better like it. And if you don't, I'm the president, I'm going to declare martial law, and so you'll like it regardless. Which is very problematic because it just shows a lot of infighting between the right and the left, and whoever's right or wrong, we're outside of that. But it just shows how they're not coming together and working towards the common good of the people, in my opinion. Again, I'm just an expat. I don't vote here. I have no dog in this hunt. I'm just retired here trying to enjoy my life. Footage showed a heavy police presence outside the National Assembly and scuffles breaking out between police and protesters, but as far as what I've seen, nobody has been hurt. This young lady right here, Kim Mi-rim, said she has packed an emergency kit just in case she has to leave her home in Seoul. So you should always have a bug-out bag. Despite the wording pronouncement, Yoon's pronouncement, it became clear within South Korea his drastic move was in response to a series of political events and has destabilized his leadership. Yeah, that's actually true, because there's been a lot of infighting in the Korean government and the different parties and so on and so forth. South Korean woman wished to remain anonymous, said attempting to restrict everyone's freedoms and right to express their concerns and judgments towards the government. I'm so scared that South Korea will turn into another North Korea. Again, this stems from the fact that when you hear the words martial law, you think of North Korea, you think of Pol Pot, you think of the Chinese Revolution that killed millions of people, and other places around the world where martial law was declared, and it wasn't good. It was only good for the the people in charge. So yeah, it's now. Was it really that bad? We didn't see anything. We didn't see a stoppage of power or internet or things like that. And the opposing side was pretty quick to jump on it. Not saying they were right or wrong or whatever. I'm just telling you the facts. But just very kind of, the questions. The president's gamble backfired. What was he thinking? When you it's just very odd. And because basically the president said that the opposing party that wouldn't help put his ideas as him being president and enacting certain things into the Korean economy or government and how it's run and so on and so forth, the things that he wanted to do and ran as, the opposing party said no, and so he kind of knee-jerk reaction of some sort and did this martial law thing. And I don't think, by what we see, with the negative effects that happened, that it probably wasn't a good call. It wasn't good because it's going to affect tourism. It's already affected banking. It's already affected their stock market. Stocks have gone down, and you're talking about overseas investors who are like, "Ooh, yeah, martial law, ping, we're out of here." It's just crazy. As a self-employed person, this person said, a small business owner, there'll be massive damage to my business. Just from his words, the currency has crashed and it will seriously affect importing materials. The currency, from what we saw as of yesterday, is the dollar to won ratio. It was like 16, maybe 18 more won per dollar than it was previously, maybe 20. The market fluctuates. So I wouldn't say it was a massive and that the currency has crashed. It was a dip. Now whether this has an effect on importing materials and companies saying, "Whoa, wait a second, we're gonna scale back some of the things we do because we don't know how stable it is in Korea," because martial law always brings to mind such positive things. That's what we got going on here. The opposition party strike down the dictatorship. There were some protesters and police, but to my knowledge and what we have seen here in Korea, that no one has been injured. So it was just very, very different. People are saying there are soldiers across the city, tanks across the major districts. My friends, I don't know if schools will be open tomorrow, how the falling value of the won and the rising exchange rates will affect the economy, and if young men might be conscripted. So again, all of this pops up and saying that, the negative effects of calling martial law in the way that he did just ended up, it just, not good. Probably not a good thing. But we see this similar, maybe not the martial law thing, but we see infighting between two different or three different political sides within a country and their politics and their politicians. And this is what I want to do, and the opposing side is going to do everything they can to not do what the other side wants to do. We see it in the United States all the time. It's that. But to really compound and to affect the stock market, to affect the currency, to affect possible business dealings and slowing of imports of goods and services in and out of Korea because of the inferred instability because of martial law. I mean, that's a huge buzzword. There's probably it's like going into a movie theater and yelling fire when there is no fire, in my opinion. It's just not a good thing to do. Now people are saying that he shouldn't have been able to do it. It was unconstitutional. I'm not a big constitutional Korea person. I've looked over it and read it, from time to time, and to look and see what rights people are afforded. And generally, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, freedom of speech, within certain boundaries, and so on and so forth. Again, you can't go into a theater and scream fire. But it's very respectful in Korea. People are very hardworking. I enjoy being in Korea. My wife enjoys it. It is a great place. Obviously, the exchange rate, which is now in our favor, is something that works out well for us, but not so much the Korean people. So again, it's one side of the coin where it's good for some, you have others where it's not good for them. And for Koreans that have a lot of U.S. dollars, we've seen and heard a lot of Koreans who are taking their U.S. dollars that they've saved, and now they're going to money exchange places and exchanging them because they can get more won for the dollar. So, that's good. But with the dip in the economy and things like this, it's going to be interesting to see kind of the fallout, the ripples that will go out from this military martial law thing and how far down the road this is going to go. We don't really know, but I imagine there will be a dip. And with the problems that Samsung is having, and there's also a conspiracy theory going on. Conspiracy theory. And let me see if I can... it ends up that... the First Lady, his wife, ends up that she is under investigation for taking gifts and other things that are against the Korean Constitution or against the Korean law as being, according to how they do things. Investigation. Let me see. I had this and it's not here. So, according to Chosun.com, this is really interesting. We'll take a look at this. First Lady scandal escalates as Yoon declares martial law. Yeah, this not really good. It was denounced, and linking the controversial move to the ongoing investigation into First Lady Kim Kyun-hee, the bloc politically motivated tactic, basically to take the investigation and all the focus off of his wife's investigation and things that she did as being the First Lady and putting it on to him with the martial law and so on and so forth. So, they're kind of, don't look over here, martial law, and forget about my wife and the things that are going on. Let's see, it talks about allegations involving Dutch motor stock manipulation case and claims tied to alleged political broker Myung Tae-kyun. Under the legislation, special prosecutor nominee would be recommended by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, granting the opposition a veto power. And it ends up, so she took some things that she wasn't supposed to take, allegations ranging from her alleged involvement in the Dutch motor stock manipulation case, politicians getting rich while they're in office. What are the odds? We see that in the United States. To controversies over luxury gifts such as Dior handbag have intensified public criticism despite prosecutors dismissing the claims as baseless. Myung Tae-kyun scandal has further compounded these challenges, prompting growing calls with the ruling bloc for a more proactive response. He said, of course, the President Yoon says neither I nor my wife have acted inappropriately, also accusing critics of engaging in character or assassination attacks against the First Lady. Less than a month later, during his sudden national address, Yoon declared emergency martial law, moving that since ignited debate over its potential impact of the administration's credibility. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting things here going on. And so it could be, I don't know. I don't think we will know, but it will cause problems for Korea instead of making them better. But again, it's a whole political thing, and it's kind of similar to what we see in the United States. When somebody comes into political office, and like say you have a congressman or a senator that gets elected, and they make $174,000 a year, and all of a sudden 3 years later they're worth $20 million. How does that happen? The only way that happens is through big interest groups paying them money to vote certain ways for certain things, and all of a sudden there's book deals. The Hunter Biden art, he's suddenly an artist and he's selling his paintings, which are horrible, for millions and millions of dollars. And when you start connecting the dots, and then the kickbacks from industries and companies and so on and so forth. So we're not squeaky clean in this either in the United States, but we're kind of seeing the same thing around a lot of places here in Korea. So scandals happen everywhere, and even if you retire overseas and become an expat, you'll experience and see things that happen. Now, the other interesting thing is that what we ended up seeing with this and this martial law thing, some of the fallout from this is, now we have this talk of impeachment, but what else has been seen locally? Here's an interesting little thing that I ended up seeing is that on Facebook, there's been a number of people, specifically immigrants, who are here legally in Korea, I'm assuming, that are posting pictures of ATMs, a lot of pictures of ATMs where it says no more cash. It's in Korean, out of cash, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of shows me that when the word martial or the phrase martial law pops up, people freak out and they don't have money. And so they withdraw as much money as they can just in case they have to leave. And that leaves the ATMs without money because there's kind of like a bank run, or at least an ATM run, and they don't have enough cash on hand because, again, it's a fiat money banking system like we have in the West. So, yeah, that's very problematic. And, of course, if you take that money out of circulation, then the banks aren't able to loan money because when you deposit money, they take that and then they're able to do fractional lending. So they get this amount of money that you deposited, and then they can loan this amount of money and then make the interest and make more money, just create money out of thin air, basically. It's just an amazing concept, the fiat money system. But yeah, when you take all that money out of circulation, the problem is that now that's going to have a ripple effect into the rest of the economy because they're not going to be able to make so many loans. So now, boom, what's going to happen with housing? What's going to happen with business loans? What's going to happen with personal loans and things like that? Belts are going to tighten because martial law, everybody, their butt puckers up and they're like, ooh, let's hedge our bets. Let's relax on lending money and doing things like this because martial law, we don't want to get caught with our pants down around our ankles. So yeah, it remains to be seen on what's going to happen here in Korea. It's not as bad as a lot of people have contacted me and said, "Hey, are you okay? Are you okay? I heard the martial law. If you need to leave, I've got a place. I got a spare bedroom. We got a guest house or whatever." It's kind of an amazing thing, but I have to, I tell people, no, everything's fine. We still got internet. We still got power. Still got food, transportation, so on and so forth. It's not like, martial law that you see in the movies. This was kind of like a knee-jerk reaction thing, and while this will have negative effects on the economy for a while, it wasn't really martial law. It was more political infighting, and maybe it was, focus over here instead of over here type of thing, the conspiracy thing. But we're good. We're good at this time. So, there's always that. Things can always happen. But I just appreciate the outpouring of people and asking me if I'm okay, if we're okay, if we need a place to go. I've had family contact me, hey, I got a place if you need to stay. And I really appreciate that. But so far, we're okay. And if you're an expat living overseas, you should have a bug-out bag. So in other words, a bag where you have some clothes, some food, some items that if something happens, you can go home, boom, pick it up and go, important documents, or at least copies of important documents and so on and so forth, along with some cash, because you never know what's going to happen. And, what happens if the grid goes down? What happens if it really was martial law and they shut the internet down and you can't pay things, with a credit card or online payments or tapping or Apple Pay or things like that? Those are real concerns, but that's not what happened here. So, but people always can work with cash. So I'm just saying, your bug out bag should have some cash, important documents and things like that, and copies of things like your birth certificates, especially if you're planning to go somewhere else where you would have to arrive on a tourist visa, or you're trying to apply for a permanent visa to some other country. You will need those documents. You'll probably need to have them basically notarized or apostilled. But usually there's a time limit in which you can have those documents apostilled, and if it's past 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, it depends on the requirements of the country. Just having them apostilled and sitting in a bag might not be a good idea because they might not work if something happens far in the future and you have to use those. So this brings to the point of what do you do? And people have asked me, well, what happens if something happens in Korea? What happens if the North comes down? What if hostilities, natural disaster, political unrest, whatever it is? What is your plan? You have to have a backup plan. And, for us being American citizens, we can always go back to the United States Not that I want to go back to the United States, but we're also considering some other alternatives as a backup retirement visa. One of those places is the Philippines, another one is Thailand, but Philippines is the least expensive. For me being a military veteran, it makes more sense because it's fairly easy to get that SSRV retirement retirement visa thing. So we're considering that, looking into some other countries. But again, you got to have some type of backup plan. And then, do you have enough medications comes into play? Is that in your bug out bag? So you should always have more than what you need and have some in your bag, rotate those things out. So for whatever medications, go to your doctor, get a 90-day supply because you're going to be traveling, and then just rotate your stock so that if something does happen, you have 90 days worth of medication on hand in case, civil unrest and you have to book. So, but yeah, other than that, it'll be interesting to see. When we're talking about Korean won exchange rate, currently, according to Z.com, it's now 1,414 Korean won of a dollar. So, no, I don't want that. Track to currency. I don't want to do that. Tools, charts, currency charts. That's what we want. The Korean won. View the chart. And yeah, there's the whole year. And we've been here for 2 years since 2024. So if you go back to basically 2023, it was around 1,200 won because it was a few months before this. Well, actually, it's 2022, 2 years. In December, it was before that. Let me see. When did we get here? We got here in October, the beginning of October, which was basically there. So it was 1440. So when we got here, it was high around 1440, 1430, and then it dipped down. And it's just been kind of pretty much going down. And then, around September and October, after Trump got elected, of course, it's going up. And then, of course, it got up to really high right there. So within the last month, it kind of peaked around around that time frame, 1440, 1433, 1434. And for the week, you can see that huge spike there, 1440. So on December 3rd. So, and then it's gone back down, but it's kind of leveling out a little bit. But and there's the daily average, which doesn't really mean much. But over the past 2 years, the Korean won rate has been going up as far as the exchange for a U.S. dollar, which is good for us. Again, not necessarily good for the Korean people unless you're Koreans that have American dollars. But there's a lot of exchange places are making money. Let's put it that way. So, and even in the 5 years, you can see that it was pretty much the same 10-year. And I think I averaged it out one time, and it was like around 1,100 won of the dollar was like the average until about 2021 and 22, and then that's when it started to go up higher. So we're kind of averaging around 1,300. So yeah, 1444. Wow. Is what it was on that day in December. So yeah, it's living overseas can be good because your United States dollar can go further, and this brings into play what is going on with our country in the United States because I'm a U.S. citizen, and with the Trump administration coming into play and with all this talk of tariffs, that has put a fire under a lot of people. And let's see, what was it? It was Mexico. And this is really interesting because Trump has ended up saying, hey, when he gets back into office, now whether you like Trump or not, it doesn't really matter. I'm an independent. And what I see is when Trump says that, hey, this whole thing with tariffs, Mexico, we're going to put you on notice. We're going to raise the tariffs. China, we're going to put, tariffs on them and other countries into basically he's using that as saying, hey, well, if you don't keep the US dollar as world reserve currency, we're going to raise the tariffs and it's going to be bad for you. Again, you can't negate the fact that Trump is a master negotiator. But this is interesting because when he started this, people are saying, oh, this will be terrible. He'll raise tariffs and it'll be bad for our country. Well, this is interesting because what we end up seeing here is that Mexico makes record fentanyl busts days after the Trump tariff threat. So the whole war on drugs thing that has been going on since the Reagan times, and Nancy Reagan, just say no, don't do drugs. I remember that very clearly. But now Mexico has suddenly had this huge, the largest fentanyl bust in the country's history, with over a ton of the synthetic opioid seized in 2 raids in the cartel-ridden northern state of Sinaloa. The largest seizure of fentanyl pills that has ever been made. So, yeah, that's amazing right there. That is just like crazy. Adding the amount seized surpasses 20 million doses. Think about it. The consumption of a person addicted to fentanyl over the course of the year is like a packet of sugar. Then think about a ton of fentanyl. We're talking more than 20 million doses and close to 8 billion Mexican pesos, or $394 million. So this whole thing with this, tariffs are bad, it's going to be bad. Seems to be putting a fire under Mexico's butt to do the right thing. And again, he's talking about raising tariffs. I can't remember what he said Mexico was going to do with that. Nationwide authorities have arrested over 5,000 criminals and seized nearly 58 tons of drugs and over 2,400 firearms. The state of Sinaloa, home of the world's most powerful drug trafficking organizations, the Sinaloa cartel, has seen a spike in murders and more than 50 people killed in the last week, according to the state prosecutor office. There's infighting, but what we're seeing with these tariffs is now suddenly Mexico is starting to enforce the laws of their country. So it'll be interesting to see how this is going to affect China, how this is going to affect other countries here in Korea, because he wants to increase tariffs on Korean products. Trump also wants to increase the amount of money that Korea puts forth for U.S. service members being here to help be a deterrent from North Korea. Which, matter of fact, before Trump came in, I think they raised it like 2.5% or something like that. The Korean government did, of kind of upping the ante of how much they're paying. But, the thing that we also have to take into consideration is that Korea has put a lot in here. Think of all the military bases that are in Korea and the land that's associated with that. They do put forth a lot. And basically, they're renting or leasing that land out to the United States military. And of course, there's SOFA agreement, Status Forces agreement, where you have to hire so many local nationals for X amount of jobs and so on and so forth. And work that's done, like on Camp Humphreys, they're building apartments for on-post housing. That has to be done through Korean contractors and so on and so forth in the bid process. So again, there's a lot of give and take. In Korea recently, as I think, if I'm not mistaken, as of last year, increased the amount of money that they're going to pay the United States for this, having U.S. troops here. But Trump says that he wants to up that even more, up to like 20, 30, 40%, some wild amount, which, with the way the economy is here now, that could be detrimental to the Korean economy. So, but again, it's a negotiating tactic. You throw out a number and then, Trump is a negotiator. And obviously, I would be surprised if he does what he says he's going to do. I think it's a negotiation tactic for countries to be able to up the ante a little bit and not hit the price that he says. Again, it's all negotiation. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But historically in the past, that's what we've ended up seeing is you shoot high, then you lowball, and then you meet somewhere in the middle to come to a decision. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the tariff thing. A lot of Koreans are worried about the Trump administration and what's going on because of his America First stance, which, you can't blame him for that. Whether it's any politician, any U.S. politician should be doing what's good for their citizens. So like in Korea or some other country, their president should do, or their leader should do, what is in the best for their citizens. So, but there also needs to be consideration. You need to have good working relationships. It goes back and forth. Politics is such a strange thing, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. But a lot of people are kind of worried about Trump and these tariffs. But then again, I think there's a lot of fish to fry before we get down to Korea. You've got Mexico, the crime. The new administration is going to be talking about getting rid of undocumented workers, people who are in the United States illegally. And I'm a big proponent of immigration. My family were immigrants and came to the United States from Europe, so I'm a big proponent of that. My ancestry is mainly German and kind of that, Viking German kind of history thing. My father's real last name was Mach, M-A-C-H, Mach. So yeah, it is what it is. And just like with any other country in the world, most countries will welcome you into their country to become a permanent resident or even a citizen of that country if you meet certain standards and do certain things. That's the country's right to do that. So when you don't do that, you're breaking the law, and that's not cool. It's kind of like if somebody came into your house and broke the rules of your house, and you're like, hey, you need to, flush the toilet after you take a dump. That's one of the rules of the house. If somebody doesn't do that, you probably won't invite that person into your home. Just saying. Tracking mud all over your floors, defecating in the corners and the halls or whatever, and doing drugs in your home. That is not something that you would want them to do. So you would kick them out of your house. That's on a micro scale. But on a big scale in the United States, it's kind of the same thing. We don't want people coming in, or any country, and no country wants people to come in and crap in their house. Honestly, let's be serious. Set aside the left-right political infighting and so on and so forth. If you go and shit in somebody's house, it's not a good thing. So you would not invite that person back to your house, and there's nothing wrong with that for the cleanliness and the sanctity of your home. So on a larger scale, when we're talking about immigration, I'm all for immigration. The United States is one of the countries that has more immigrants coming in than any other country in the world. And as long as you meet those standards, I'm all for it. That is one of the things that made America great and I use that phrase prior to the Trump administration bringing that to light. So just don't think I'm a Trump fanboy. I'm not. But what we talk about is the hard work ethic, and that everybody is given a fair shake of saying, hey, no longer are you going to be held down because you're not of aristocracy, that you're not royalty, or if you don't belong to this state church or this or that or whatever, you have the same right to work, have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not the guarantee of happiness, but the pursuit of happiness. And people from pretty terrible places have come to the United States with nothing, and over a generation have become wealthy. It's granted it's harder now than it was in the past, but so is everything. But then on the other side of the coin, we also have greater things that we had than in the past, like medical advancements, food, things like that. It's just amazing on what we have, on how we're able to live longer and healthier lives, better quality of life than we were, 100 years ago. So again, there's give and take in everything, but it remains a fact that people who are severely poor come to the United States and enter legally have been able to change their financial destiny from poor and destitute to rich. And even our poor are rich considered to other countries rich. You don't really know what poor is unless you live in a place that has a dirt floor, that doesn't have electricity, that doesn't have medical care, that doesn't have access to clean drinking water. All of the things that we take for granted. not even going to get into the Starbucks and cell phones and all that stuff. But for people to be able to come to a country and to work hard and be paid what they're due and be able to save and change their destiny for them and their families forever is amazing. And I think that's what made the United States strong way back in the day. The other thing was that, while there's groups of people in the United States that kind of hung around each other, you had the Mexicans, you had the Americans, you had the Scottish, the Irish, the Germans, and, well, except for the World War II thing. But beside that, you had these where people would come and they would be, okay, well, I got to live somewhere. Would you feel more comfortable living around people of your own nationality and race? Of course you would. That's how it was. And they helped each other. So that was another huge thing, is that your people would help you and your family. And then in turn, as you became successful, that you would help people that would come into the country just getting their boots on the ground, which is one of the things that I think that made America really strong. And other countries have seen this same thing as well. So yeah, it's just really interesting. I do think there needs to be standards, because you have standards of who can come into your home and who you won't let into your home. Same thing applies for countries. Anyway, back to Korea. Korea is not a real big retirement-friendly place for expats. They don't have like an easy retirement visa like you see in the Philippines or Thailand or Bali or Portugal or, just a number, Malaysia, things like that. It's really a homogenous society and demographic, so they're not as, it's not as retiree friendly as other countries. But because my wife has Korean nationality, she's born and raised here, and I'm married to her, that we're able to get a long-term visa for each of us. So it's kind of different. It's a different type of world, but I like Korea. I like the Korean people. I like the respect. I like the rule of law and how people, they really do respect each other. And while there's times where people feel lonely in Korea because you're not amongst your same nationality or race or whatever, Korean people as a whole, they're great. They're busy, they're working, they have good work ethics. Anytime, we've had problems and have to ask somebody, they always try to help out and so on and so forth. Not like what I've seen in the United States, at times a lot. So, there's that. But it remains to be seen on the effects of this martial law that was declared and revoked shortly after. Matter of fact, before I started this video, I still had people contacting me saying, "Hey, are you okay? I heard martial law was declared. What's going on?" It's like, it's just political infighting. Granted, I think the last time they did it was like in 1980 or 1979, so it's been a minute. But I think this is a political move that's going to end poorly for President Yoon here in Korea. And who's next in line? I don't know. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting is there's still a doctor strike going on. If you've watched some of my prior videos or my older videos, it's been a few years, and where the Korean government wanted to increase the number of Korean doctors in the country. So, in other words, you got Korea, and they haven't increased the number of doctors in 27 years. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. So the current administration wanted to increase the number of doctors because the Korean Doctors Union said, hey, we're being overworked, we're, blah, 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 we have all these problems. They'll see a couple, 150 to 200 patients a day, meaning you might see a patient for 2, 3, 4 minutes. It's really, things can get missed because you don't have a lot of time with patients. It's getting to the point of where it's breaking. And I've talked about this in the past. It's just not good. And so when the government says, hey, we want to increase the number of doctors, it wasn't like 10,000 more doctors. It was 2,000. And then the doctors union says, no, we're going to go on strike. So the residents, the doctors union convinced the residents to go on strike. And so they're not working. And they haven't been working. The negative effects of that is that appointments have been canceled. People have died as a result of not being able to get treatment or surgeries, and Matter of fact, I just read a thing where a kid ended up dying because he couldn't be accepted into a hospital, and he could have been treated and saved, but he wasn't because there weren't enough doctors. And the senior doctors, like the supervising doctors who are also high in the doctors union, said, well, they're not going to go on strike, but they're just going to reduce the number of days that they work. So isn't it funny? So the resident doctors who haven't finished their residency, they convince them to not work at all. And a lot of work goes to those people. And then the senior doctors who have, they have a dog in the hunt, they don't say, oh, we're just not going to work. We're just going to reduce our hours. I find that very hypocritical, especially when you look at the Hippocratic Oath, which they swore to uphold. But the negative effects of that is appointments have been pushed back 6 to 8 months, even more. There's Koreans that are going overseas to different countries to get treatment and surgeries because they can't get it here. There was talks of how people have had heart attacks and strokes. Hospitals wouldn't accept them, so they went to another hospital. There was one person who went to 7 different hospitals, and they ended up dying because they couldn't get treatment. Yeah, so there is a severe doctor shortage here in Korea, and there's some places that we can't go because there's a doctor shortage. Now, we can still get good medical coverage and so on and so forth. And with that, I have TRICARE. The better insurance you have, the better chances of getting treated, because that's like a blank check for the hospitals. And the majority of hospitals are for-profit hospitals here in Korea. So, when the people complain about being overworked and underpaid and whatever, but they don't complain to the hospital that hired them, they don't strike against them, they strike against the government that wants to hire 2,000 more doctors and wants to put doctors into, smaller towns and cities and so on and so forth, which I think is really weird because the doctors union doesn't want that. And it was actually quoted from the Korean Doctors Union that there's not enough prestige to go around. So prestige comes with the title of being a doctor, and there's only so many doctors, and that prestige would be lessened. And so that's another reason why they don't want more doctors. And it's like, holy crap, how, that doesn't even make sense. What about the call to do no harm and to heal patients and do all that, the Hippocratic Oath. Very, very problematic. And of course, the Yoon administration said that they were going to do everything. He tried to call the bluff of the doctors union, saying that he would, put fines and jail time and blah, 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 and all that. And it was a bluff game. And eventually the current administration said, yep, oh, okay, well, we're not going to do anything. And you never hear of it again. But yet the doctors are still on strike. But the government reduced the amount of new doctors they want down to 1,500, which is less than maybe one new doctor per couple of departments within a hospital. So it's not like he's going to overflow, the hospitals with so many new doctors that they're going to, be destroyed. But that's what the doctors union says. Oh, this is going to destroy the medical system as we know it. And it's like, no, they haven't lowered the standards. They still have to get residency, still meet the same requirements, and you might get one new doctor for maybe 2 or 3 departments, and seeing that they're overworked and they're working 80 to 100 to 120 hours a week, and you're complaining about being overworked, but you don't want more doctors. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And they don't come up with ideas on saying, hey, well, we don't want more doctors because we have a better plan. Never heard a plan, and nobody asked that question. So that's kind of weird in and of itself. So anyway, that's what we got going on here in Korea. And I know I've been long-winded, but the whole martial law thing is we're okay. We're doing fine. President Yoon looks like they're going to be trying to impeach him. We talked about the negative effects of the short martial law that he declared. And the doctor strike is still ongoing, and it seems like nobody cares. So it's just, I don't know how these resident doctors are surviving. I don't get it. They're not being paid. They're not at work, and they have student loans to pay off of going to medical school. So I'm not sure how all of this comes into play. You know, there's a lot of questions that are not being asked from what I see on Korean news sources. So, but yeah, since the bluff was called, and it's like, but like I said, the Korean Doctors Union has not increased the number of doctors, and every time it's brought up, they go on strike and the government folds. They bend their knee to the Doctors Union, and then that's it. I don't get it. And as an aging demographic here in Korea, is more people are going to be older than newer, and the birth rate for Korea is really low as well. So now that's another problem that we're also seeing in the United States and other parts of the world. What are you going to do with the aging population who needs more appointments? And it's only going to, this problem is only going to be exacerbated as people get older and need more appointments. So yeah, and neither, you know, the doctors union side has not provided any plans of saying, well, here's our suggestion, here's our plan on how we can fix this. There's absolutely none. They just stick their head in the sand and say, we don't want more doctors. It'll anyway, so that's what we got going on here in Korea. So anyway, with that being said, what do you think about martial law? What have you heard as far as what thoughts did that bring to mind? The impeachment, doctor strike going on. I mean, I know it sounds all doom and gloom, but we're doing really good. But I'd like to hear what you think, so put that in the comment section down below, and we'll take a read and see what you all think. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate that. And with that, if you get anything out of my videos, yeah, like and subscribe. And if you want to, you can even buy me a coffee. There's a link in the description box. I would really appreciate that. If not, don't worry. At least give it a like. Appease the YouTube gods. And yeah, a whole lot of stuff going on. Engraving, laser engraving, miniature painting, so on and so forth. I'm on a big laser engraving kick right now. So that's into play. And then being an expat who's retired in Korea, if you have further questions, put those in the comment section, or you can email me at this email address right down there. So that's it. I got to finish my shake. I'm getting hungry, and we will see you on the next video. Peace. Good stuff.